Welcome back after a month off to the Fight Sites MMA podcast. I guess this is episode two, technically episode three, but episode two. I'm joined, as always, by Danny Martin, and this time with a special guest, the best MMA writer there is, as evidenced by the Aldo article that came out. This is Ryan Wagner.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Oh, we apologize. We kind of gained some momentum with our first two, and then it was right as the year was ending. And I think a lot of us had like articles we needed to finish. The fight site needed to finish that top 20 series. I think we just kind of got scattered a bit. But now that the new year started, we have at least something of a schedule, a nominal schedule to go on. And hopefully Ryan is going to be more of a regular on the show. So we should be a lot more consistent from here on out.
Yeah, it was also right as the Edgar zombie card came up, and there really wasn't a ton to say about that.
Yeah.
Now we're back with a pay-per-view, and it isn't great, but it is a pay-per-view. UFC 246, Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone. Yeah, so I guess we start with that fight. Initial reads, I think I know what they are, but initial reads.
I think we're all kind of on the same page with how we read this fight. In pretty much every way, Conor should win this fight unless he is completely, absolutely done, or if Cerrone lands the head kick of his life. Sound fair?
So,
pretty much.
To me, this seems like a fight tailor-made just to see if Conor is still there, to see like where exactly he's at, and if he finishes Cerrone in round one, they can throw him into a title fight against Khabib, I guess, because that's what they're probably going to do. If he goes to like a contentious 5-round decision, maybe they can give him like Gaethje to see if he can step it up to where he deserves a title shot. But yeah, it's a see if Conor's shot fight, and if he isn't, I think he'll blow Cerrone up in round one. Now, for the why I expect him to dominate Cerrone, there's obviously Cerrone's historical struggles against southpaws. He does not have layered pocket defense. He can kind of maybe slip outside one shot, but he's not going to be like, he doesn't have a response after he does that. He won't slip outside the straight and then come back with a counter and move off. He'll just kind of slip outside the straight and then either try to tie up or be there for follow-up shots. He's not slipping more than one punch at a time, and he stands up very tall. So if you can back him up, you can get him on his heels, where he's not in position to counter, he's not in position to defend, and he's not in great position to take shots, so that when he does end up eating a clean straight, it's devastating. And at least when he's fighting an orthodox fighter, he can kind of get behind his shoulder. The southpaw matchup opens up that lane for the rear straight, and he has similar problems with pressure. He does not have very good outside footwork. He operates best on the outside, but he's not great at maneuvering himself around the ring. So he isn't going to be doing like L steps and clever circling. He's generally easy to back up to the cage when guys are aggressive. And like I said, he ends up on his heels, puts himself in bad positions, and makes it easier to hit him harder. And he's developed some tools recently to mitigate the pressure. He has his intercepting knee and reactive takedowns. The problem here is that his intercepting knee works really well against orthodox fighters because he has a great switch knee, and the whole switching thing can kind of create a double threat with his round kicks. So people will be hesitant to step in because they don't know if he's going to pick the knee up to knee him or if he's going to kick them. But Conor is a very long fighter. He doesn't have to get very close to Cerrone to close distance. If you look at Alexander Hernandez, his fight against Cerrone, he was doing a lot of just straight up running at Cerrone, sprinting, shifting combinations, losing track of his positioning on the front foot. Conor isn't going to do that. He's going to push Cerrone back while staying at a comfortable distance himself, so that if Cerrone kicks him, he can either slide back and make it miss or step in and counter. And it's going to be really hard for Cerrone to find those spots to time knees if Conor even needs to get close enough to land the straight where he exposes himself to the knee. For his reactive takedowns, there could be something there. I think that's probably the best shot Cerrone has at victory. The times Conor has been taken down have mostly been reactive takedowns, And he's shown that if guys can catch him when he's fully extended on that straight, they can tend to take him off his feet. Even Dennis Seaver did it. Mendez did it really easily. But he's been caught a couple times with those reactive takedowns. And while Cerrone doesn't have very good chain wrestling, he has pretty good timing. He can time you stepping in with a straight and duck under it and get in on your hips. But it seems kind of tenuous whether or not he'll be able to leverage that to an actual consistent path of victory. So first of all, Conor is very smart. He's not the best wrestler in MMA, but he's very competent. If Cerrone doesn't get him down on his initial shot, he isn't going to chain. He's not going to switch off to a knee tap and take him down. Conor has the takedown defense to stop him and then create separation and break contact. And Cerrone's too tall to really get in clean like Mendez did. He won't just duck down and shoot his way onto the hips. He kind of bends over. And Conor, as soon as he shows that level change, as soon as Conor feels that he's looking for the takedown, I expect him to start throwing uppercuts. And Cerrone, which will probably make Cerrone hesitant, either make him think twice about shooting the takedowns like that, or make him duck onto an uppercut and get hurt. Kind of like Till did. He tried to take down Till, and then Till was flashing uppercuts, and it made him back off that. So there's a chance he gets Conor down by countering his straight, and he might do some work with that. He can perhaps submit him, maybe pass guard and work on top, but I don't think he gets a chance to do it twice, because, like I said, he only has that one takedown, and I think Conor is too smart not to adjust to it. So yeah, that's my read. Cerrone has a small chance to hit a reactive takedown and maybe submit him early in the fight. If that doesn't happen, I don't see a consistent path to victory.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's also interesting, first, Cerrone's actual boxing is kind of terrible in the sense that it works to, back guys off to land kicks, at the end, the Dutch kickboxing sort of thing. But as far as, actual boxing goes, he's always squaring up as he runs forward, and it's really just not very good. Gaethje ran him into counters with that, and McGregor's probably going to do worse if he's anywhere close to where he used to be. And the same sort of issues that he had with body work against Pettis and Dos Anjos and essentially everyone. He's going to come back against the most consistent body hitter he's hit in a while, at least if McGregor's in even Nurmagomedov form, because he hit Khabib's body a good deal. So this is it's a bad fight for Cerrone as far as, well, not as far as money, but as far as actually winning the fight.
I agree with all that. I think I co-sign with everything. The thing is that I'm a little surprised, Ryan. That was a lot more in depth than I think we were expecting to go. Namely, just because Cerrone is such the book has been written on him so many times.
Seems so obvious.
Yeah, it really does. And if you look at his past opponents, Mike Perry, Ali Quinta, Alexander Hernandez, they don't bear any kind of resemblance to McGregor. We understand that Cerrone's cagecraft has never been the best part of his game. We know that he can be drawn into boxing matches, and that he doesn't tend to win those. That he doesn't. Has he ever beaten a southpaw? I don't know if he has.
Jim Miller.
Yeah, I think
he beat
Dunham
one.
is a southpaw, isn't he? Is Dunham a southpaw?
I thought he was orthodox. Maybe he's a southpaw. I'm not sure.
Either way, he has a glass body.
But it's slim pickings. That's not. There's not. It's not a good ratio. I think the main question I think that we all kind of have is we're not exactly sure what we're going to see from Conor, and the reason this matchup is kind of dumb is because if Conor goes out and just dusts Cerrone like we sort of expect him to, it's not really going to tell us anything about where he's at.
Yeah.
All it's going to tell us is that he's still capable of beating a certain class of opponent. Maybe he's still capable of beating a top 15 lightweight / welterweight. Okay, that's fine. But that doesn't tell us anything about his actual competitive standing against guys like Ferguson, or like guys like Poirier or Gaethje or, God forbid, Khabib. It's difficult, and like I said, no matter what, only if Conor like really underperforms, like like Ryan, like you said, if he gets taken down and worked from top, if he's like, really can't find his distance, which has never been an issue. If he's just physically completely gone, like only then can we really draw from this performance. But if he just goes out there and sparks Cerrone, like that's not really going to put us in much different standing than where we are now.
It's almost like one of those fights where you expect a guy to dominate, and if he doesn't, it kind of looks bad for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is such an extreme example of that.
Yeah, I think we're kind of at the same place where Cerrone faced both Robbie Lawler and Tony Ferguson, where there's a good chance it doesn't look like those fights technically, but the sort of narrative is the same, where McGregor comes out, he wins the fight because he's supposed to, but he also doesn't really look as good as he used to because he's on the way down. I kind of have the same worry, and we're kind of stepping ahead a bit, like in the calendar, but when someone gets this kind of squash match like RDA Chiesa or McGregor Cerrone, you kind of have the same worry that even if they win, there's a certain standard that they need to be held to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, I think the basic dynamics are pretty obvious. Cerrone is not layered defensively. He's not crafty enough on the outside. He doesn't have the same kind of depth to deal with Conor. Like if he can't land a takedown or just land the head kick of his life, both of which seem fairly low percentage. Conor is he's just much better in the kind of fight that Cerrone is going to contend to. So
yeah, sounds about right. Don't think there's a whole lot more to say for this fight.
Really.
Next one, of course, Holly Holm versus Raquel Pettis. Oh, wait. No, Anthony Pettis versus Diego Ferreira. That's the good one.
This is awesome. Like this should be a great fight. So I guess we should, again, kind of starting with the known quantity here in Anthony Pettis, because I think a lot of this matchup does depend on CDF. Pettis is never. I think we've known since maybe 2015, 2016 that Pettis was never going to find his way back to a title, but he has proven to be one of the toughest and most game fighters that we've ever seen. Like, if I can, make a quick aside, I want to just pull up how the fighters that he's fought, because it deserves to be pointed out. So, I mean, he has been fighting this is a murderer's row. Like, even as early as like Weck, Danny Castillo, Benson Henderson twice, Clay Guida, Jeremy Stevens, Joe Lozon, okay. Cerrone, Melendez, RDA, Alvarez, Barboza, Oliveira, Holloway, Miller, Poirier, Chiesa, Ferguson, Thompson, and Diaz. Like,
wow.
Like, when you line it up, that is just like, never would I ever sign anybody up for that kind of run. Of course you're going to take losses. Like, I don't know if it gets pointed out enough about Anthony Pettis, because he's been in so many fights and so many of them have been just wild and crazy for one reason or another. But like, just the sheer volume that this guy has fought, like, not even disregarding wins or losses, just in terms of names, he might have the best name power of any fighter that we've ever seen. Like, he's just been in there with everyone. He also looks like he might be kind of done. I think that the Ferguson fight and the Diaz fight looked a lot like an aging fighter who is, capable of putting a couple of moments together, but I think his fight-winning gambits are becoming slimmer and slimmer as time goes on. I think the Stephen Thompson knockout was amazing and also incredibly low percentage. I think in the third round of that Diaz fight, it really looked like it should have been stopped. it's funny how Pettis's game. He's like, he's been fairly hot and cold for now what looks like the majority of his career, but the flaws in his game have never really been corrected. He's still kind of a void in the clinch. He still lacks any sort of craft along the cage, any kind of defensive depth. He's still sometimes resorts to arm punches, and without the same sort of the same kind of dynamism that he had more earlier in his career. It's just getting harder for him to win fights.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Pettis is turning into a weird sort of glass cannon. Like, he's still very durable in terms of chin. Like, he was able to take a dumb amount of punishment against Ferguson, for example, and even Diaz was mostly like, if it was finished in the third round, it would have been a volume finish rather than ate a bunch of big shots and quit. But between just destroying Stephen Thompson in the blink of an eye for no reason and getting injured in every single fight, a fight like RDA is not one that Pettis is likely to survive these days. And it's pretty relevant in this fight because CDF has turned into, for lack of a better term, in terms of both career narrative and like approach, a sort of budget RDA.
Yeah. I've been extremely impressed with CDF recently, and he kind of came out of nowhere for me. I'd liked him for a while, but I liked him as a grappler. Like, he was this guy who he didn't have the best wrestling. He could take guys down now and again, but his counter wrestling was sick. The Olivier Aubin-Mercier fight, OAM took him down and just got like dunked on every time he did. And then CDF ended up winning it kind of through aggression on the feet because he couldn't do anything to him on the ground. But somewhere along the line, he became like a banging pressure boxer, and it kind of shocked me against Taisumov. It was an incredibly impressive performance. I'm watching that right now, and he's like, he's never been the most nuanced striker, but here he's doing stuff like using throwaway jabs to draw out counters. He's slipping inside jabs and countering combinations, drawing out Taisumov's jab, slipping inside, landing a lead uppercut and an overhand. He's weaving off his right hand, punching the body, just almost everything you would want to see from a pressure fighter, except very sound cage cutting. That could use a little bit of work. But he's still the kind of archetype that tends to give Anthony Pettis a ton of issues. Like we've said, Pettis has always had issues with his clinch game, with his ring craft, cage craft, I guess. He's kind of similar to Cerrone in that way. Like, he doesn't seem to notice that he's backing himself up into the fence until he's already on the fence. And for someone who operates mainly at distance, and especially as a southpaw fighter who needs that southpaw distance to play his like pot shot game, where he plays his rear straight off his rear round kick, it's a problem because whenever fighters are aggressive, they can get him to exchange, and then his defense, his positioning, his offense all collapse in exchanges. He's not the type that can like stay in the pocket and throw combinations of hooks. He'll throw one straight and then get himself on his heels to where he's out of position to continue the exchange, and then fighters can continue to hit him. So the broad kind of stylistic matchup seems to be that Ferreira is going to pressure him and put volume on him, and Pettis is going to need to make something shocking happen in order to win. And like Danny said, he's probably not at the point in his career where he can do that. His body seems to be falling apart. He's been finished multiple times because his body just broke down. It happened against Ferguson. There was at least one other one, wasn't there? Where he just, the Poirier fight, where he was turning out of a body triangle and his ribs just like snapped, I guess. But so the broad matchup is that CDF is gonna work him over with pressure. One thing I think that's in Pettis' favor is that I could see Ferreira struggling with the southpaw kicker. So he, like I said, he's very active in his pressure. He's very aggressive, and he uses his boxing really smartly. He uses layered throwaway punches to draw out counters. He counters in combination. He does everything you would want to see from a pressure boxer. But he his cage cutting is not the best. He tends to follow guys around. And I could see him finding a matchup where he can't really get the entries he needs. Against Taisumov, he's not just like storming in, pushing him to the cage really aggressively and like hitting him on the counter. He's working his way in methodically. He needs to use like a jab here and there to draw something out, or a soft right hand to close distance. And that can be harder to do with the distance of a southpaw. And especially someone who can circle off to the open side. I could kind of see something like a very higher level version of Mike Perry against Alan Joban, where a southpaw just kind of denies him his jab, controls the lead hand, and just circles towards the open side while pelting him with kicks and straights. And I think he could struggle to keep up with him and find the entries he needs to create exchanges. But I don't think Pettis is that guy at this point. I think the first round, he might be able to give him some trouble with that and limit the volume that Ferreira is able to put on him. But I think as the fight goes on, Pettis is going to drain. Ferreira is going to punch him and kick him in the body. And he's going to get in and create messy exchanges when he can. And I don't think Pettis will still be there, if he even has the footwork to do that in the first place. So I have to pick Ferreira by either an increasingly wide decision as the fight goes on, or a third round finish.
Yeah, honestly, I think I agree with all that. There were some, as you pointed out, Ryan, there were some sort of specific tactical things that Ferreira did against Taisumov that were really clean. Like he's got an understanding of rhythm. You know, like you said, he was using throwaway jabs, using lighter shots to set up harder ones. One of the things that Taisumov tried to do against Ferreira was that he tried to sort of punch and clutch. And so he would throw, and then he would kind of crash in behind the punch and attempt to hold the clinch. But CDF has turned into a nasty clinch fighter. Like he's pretty mean. He actually did a really nice job along the cage of getting wrist control on Taisumov. Maybe holding a leg and holding his other wrist out, kneeing him in the body, occasionally headbutting him was great. And so you sort of talk about like safety zones in a fight. And I'm not sure what Pettis is in this fight. Like like I said, he could conceivably kick CDF from long range, kick his leg. But I mean, have we ever seen Pettis work his way past a consistent jab?
The fact that he works out of the open stance all the time means that a lot of people aren't really trying to jab him.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess we'll have to see. Maybe he's actually able to sort of mitigate that entry tool from Ferreira, and that might open some things up. But CDF is just, I feel like he just has the initiative now. And like, that was a really kind of one of the shocking things about the Taisumov fight, was how much he was actually able to gain that momentum, to use feints. And then even when they were actually throwing down in the pocket, Ferreira never lost his head. Like he didn't get dumb. He actually was still trying to move and slip with shots. Even if he was eating shots, he wouldn't, extend exchanges past what was comfortable. And
he was getting cracked in the first round too. Like,
yeah,
I can't overstate how much confidence and composure he needed to be able to push through a banger like Taisumov. This is a guy who's knocked like most of the people he's fought in the UFC out. He's super heavy-handed, a really, really devastating counterpuncher. And CDF just goes out intent to like walk through, weather the storm, still be there in exchanges. He didn't shy away at all. And he wilted Taisumov. It was incredibly impressive. Pettis will wilt, I think, if he does that.
Yeah. Yeah, in some ways it was like, some of it was textbook, like this is how you defuse a counterpuncher, like type of stuff, where he would be feinting, he would disguise his entries, he would be using throwaway punches, he would kick at Taisumov. I don't know if you've ever seen Taisumov really deal with a kicker. But some of it was also just him being super tough and like just, have an insane initiative, which I feel like I find myself saying more and more when I talk about MMA, because I think it is an increasingly valuable component of a fighter is being able to take initiative, momentum wise, and and matchup wise. It just sort of feels like it's CDF's fight. Sriram, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think you guys have made the point better than I could. Mostly just saying something on a totally different topic. It's really unfortunate that CDF's fight against Trinaldo fell out at UFC 237 because that would have been the best fight ever.
That'd have been good.
But yeah, in general,
we at the Fight Site are all Trinaldo stands.
Gotta be King Trinaldo. But I mean, I think at this point CDF might have done him just by being willing
Probably.
to work. And
yeah, I think so.
Throwing a lot and tanking.
I would agree.
But it's a really good fight, and I think it's one where it would be one of the better wins of Pettis' late career, considering the manner of the Thompson fight.
Oh yeah.
It's just not one that you can reliably trust Pettis to win at this stage in his career. Any stage of his career, honestly, it's tough to see Pettis winning a fight where he can't out-grapple the guy. If CDF ends up on top, Pettis can't just explode into a triangle, and he can't really deal with someone who just walks him down and beats the crap out of him.
Yeah. I mean, this should be a lot of fun. There's no way that it won't be. And I think, I don't know, has anyone written a CDF piece? I think Phil has one coming out. Depending on how he does.
We have one coming out. I think.
We do.
Yeah, it's Phil, right? Yeah. Julian's doing Pettis and Phil's doing CDF.
Sweet. Okay. Well, then that's really cool because CDF has turned himself into a very good fighter. And I think if the top 10 was rounded out with someone like CDF, I think all of us would be very pleased to see that. But it would also be nice to see Pettis pick up a win in his, because like I said, I think he's close to being done. And so if he actually turned back, someone who's made obvious improvements who should be really tough for him, I think that would be nice to see as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing before we finish up that I want to say is just, I've been talking about how much I love CDF because he's become a great pressure boxer. But in a recent fight against Jared Gordon, he dropped him and then finished him with ground and pound from a hammerlock. And anyone who uses hammerlocks in MMA is automatically a favorite. So Fajeda is an absolute boy.
Yeah, it was preceded by 2 dick kicks, but that gotta take what you can get.
Yeah, take your wins when you can get them.
Exactly.
So what is sort of crafty cheating?
It was just Rothwell Struve. So what is it? Fili Yusuff is the next one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who wants to start that one, Sriram? What's your read?
I honestly don't have as strong a read on Yusuff as you guys do, or at least as strong as Danny does, because he's been excited about Yusuff for a long time. But the fight between the Shaman killers is probably just going to depress me a good deal, because they killed Shaman. Yeah, I think Fili has turned into something reasonably interesting these days. He could arguably be on, a 5-win streak if the MJ win, or if the MJ loss rather went the other way. And
oh, really? Is it that long?
It could have been without the loss to MJ.
Oh, okay.
That was a close fight too.
Yeah, so it arguably should have gone the other way. I believe the media had it for Fili by a decent amount, although I don't know how much that means. But yeah, it would have been, after the loss to King Cater, it would have been Artem Lobov, Dennis Bermudez, although he probably didn't beat Bermudez. But
yeah,
Artem
that was
Lobov,
a close one too.
Yeah, Dennis Bermudez, Michael Johnson, Miles Jury, and Shaman Moraes. So he's been going from strength to strength recently, for the most part, and I think he could be tough for Yusuff just in something that Yusuff hasn't seen before. Shaman Moraes did have a lot of success against Yusuff in a weird low-volume fight that he threw away at the very end. But I think I trust Yusuff to find a way to win against a Fili who's... for some reason, I still don't really trust him. I think Shaman just did Shaman's thing.
Shaman just imploded.
Yeah. Muay Thai
He called him
Johnson.
MJ.
Unlike him. So I've been, well, apart from the Lloyd Irving stuff, I've been very excited about Yusuff, because he just looks like he is a comfortable, all-around, technically skilled, and very athletic, just really, really impressive in every area that we've seen from him, and just a very well-designed fighter. There may not be any like specific thing that jumps out about him, but it's just sort of all the elements of his game just seem to work really well on the feet. I don't think he's the deepest. I don't think he's the deepest striker in that division necessarily, but he's got a few weapons that he does well with. Like he tends to, he's got a good left hook. Well, he'll close off the right hand. Inside, he's a very handsy fighter. I think he really excels in open stance matches. Like he tends to cross countering the jab tends to be his MO. He can kick the legs, he can kick up high, he'll kick the body. I'm still not convinced that he is a particularly sound pressure fighter in terms of his footwork. I think he's pressuring is sort of in his DNA, but I don't know how like tight his actual cage cutting is. But the thing is, I'm not actually sure like how much that is going to get interplay against Fili, because I also don't know how confident I am in Fili as an outfighter. He's always been uniquely fragile. And like, while I think getting his own boxing coach has certainly paid dividends, like he has a much more active jab now. He is, much better at putting combinations. I think he dropped Shaman with like he kind of punched off his kick, right? He like punched off
blocked a body kick and threw a right hand and immediately followed up with a head kick. It was sick.
Okay, so he kicked off his punches. Okay. And that was really cool. Like it's really, that's not the kind of stuff that you'd see him throwing when he was fighting Max Holloway, for instance. We are not far enough. We're not far enough away from Fili getting dropped by Miles Jury's back fist for me to have confidence in him. I do think he can kind of be a little bit one-track minded in terms of like all offense and all defense. And he's eminently kickable. His legs and his body, like, even Shaman Moraes was having success in that regard. So if he is committed to like, establishing his jab, I think he runs the risk of, getting cross countered by someone who that increasingly appears to be their favorite counterpunch. And if he sits too far away, he might just run the risk of getting kicked to pieces. And I just think he's like a hair. I think he's just a touch too fragile for me to pick him here. I don't necessarily trust him in exchanges. Yusuff has been dropped and he has been finished, but he's shown a lot more composure in those kinds of fights, and I haven't necessarily seen that from Fili. So I'm going to pick Yusuff by maybe a second round TKO.
This might be a dumb question, but looking at Yusuff's opposition, they've all been pretty much entirely strikers.
Yeah, Fili's going to hit reactive takedowns.
Yeah, Fili has some sick reactive takedowns that he hit on like Bermudez. He hits them on.
That's a good point.
Pretty much everyone from what I've seen. So I think if Yusuff rather is going to try to pressure, that might be a problem he runs into. But past that, I think I agree. If it stays standing, I think Yusuff has a decent advantage. But it's also hard for me to look past the Moraes fight, or at least the majority of it. I'm going to go with Yusuff by unanimous decision because, as you said, I don't really trust Fili as much as I probably should at this point. But it's one where an upset is possible.
From my read, Sriram, you talked about not feeling like you have a great idea of who Yusuff is as a fighter. For me, his A game is close range pocket counterpunching. He is not the kind of counterpuncher who will like Conor, who will hop back and give ground and like return with a long straight. He closes distance off his counters. He, like Danny said, he has a great cross counter, countering his opponent's jab with the overhand. He counters in combination really well, and his right hook is really, really versatile. He'll use it to close distance off his opponent's jab. He can use it in combos. He hits the body with it really well. there's not a lot of fighters who have a great right hook. It's a hard punch to use in MMA with the distance. So MMA fighters tend not to like deep exchanges and tend to prefer pot shotting on the outside. But Yusuff is really good at getting close to guys and throwing the right hook over the top. He also has a great counter left hook, so it makes exchanging with him really tough. In terms of his pressure game, he seems to want to pressure at a lot of times, but like Danny said, he doesn't have the most sound pressure game. His footwork seems okay to me. I don't think it's bad, but it's not special either. He does kind of the right ideas. He will advance diagonally. He doesn't just like stop and turn on the spot, but he's not urgent. A lot of times you can back him off just by exchanging with him, and he'll take breaks and just kind of circle around. He'll let guys escape the fence because he like seemingly doesn't feel like closing off the space and circling with them, or doesn't think he needs to. So I think he'll have a tough time if he feels like he needs to pressure Fili to win. Fili, on the other hand, he's a harder fighter to conceptualize for me. I think he does his best work in mid-range. He isn't an outfighter, but he can move around on the outside a bit. He's not super easy to back to the cage. He can circle off well enough. He has some pivoting footwork, but he's not adept there. He does his best does his best work kind of on the edge of the pocket. His best punch is his jab. He has a very layered jab. He feints it well. He doesn't build off it enough. He doesn't build off it as much as I'd like. He doesn't put it together with his right hand very much. But the jab itself works very well, keeping guys on the outside and allowing him to enforce the range that he wants. I don't think Fili is much of a pressure guy himself, but I think he's good enough on the outside that most of the guys he's fighting find it hard to play an outfighting game and kind of lead him into counters, because he works so well with those long weapons like his jab and those long kicks. He doesn't really need to close distance. I think Yusuff is really going to struggle with the distance here. Whenever I see someone who does his best work in the pocket and has really slick hands on the inside, I'm always kind of wary when they fight their first really long-range, jabby, kicky guy who can maybe take away those entries into where they're good. Because Yusuff is great on the inside. He's an excellent counterpuncher. He works in combinations, hits the body, but I don't know if he can close distance on a long-rangey guy who uses it well like Fili. And I think this is one of the fights where I kind of have to see him do it before I can see him reliably doing it. So I'm going to pick Fili by probably UD. I think that, like Sriram mentioned, if Yusuff does want to pressure and get aggressive, that Fili will hit him with reactive takedowns. I don't think Fili can control him on the ground, not because I know much about Yusuff's bottom game, but Fili just doesn't seem like that type of fighter who really makes his hay on top. He uses the reactive takedowns more to break up his opponent's rhythm and prevent them from getting too aggressive. And I think Yusuff will struggle a lot to get past his jab. Well, he has an excellent counter right hand. I don't know if he can close distance off it the way he needs to in order to beat Fili. The reach is a big thing here for me. I think Fili can just kind of lace them with the jab and make the counters fall short. And I don't know that Yusuff himself is able to do what he needs in order to make it land. Like, I don't know if he can come in with a dipping double jab and then draw the jab out of Fili and counter over top with the right hand. I think there's a good chance he'll be sitting on the outside too much and not able to enforce his pressure, which will lead to him whiffing on right hand counters when Fili throws the jab. And another thing about Yusuff is that he seems like kind of a mark for body kicks. In his fight with Benitez was landing the southpaw body kick. Every time he threw it, he was landing it clean. And against Shaman, Fili went southpaw a couple times and was pelting him with those a couple times. And I think if he wants to do that against Yusuff, it'll be wide open. I'm not as concerned with Yusuff's kicks as you guys. I don't think he handled Moraes' kicks too bad. we joke about Moraes being like the kind of fighter who falls apart, like a Brazilian MJ, and he kind of is that. But he's still a very adept kicker. The kicks he was doing against Fili, when they were landing clean, he was countering his entries, his jab entries. So Fili would throw a jab, and Moraes would like slide back or slip inside it and land a simultaneous leg kick to take away his ability to check. Yusuff, I haven't seen that from Yusuff. He's not a crafty leg kicker so much as he is just a willing leg kicker. And when Moraes was just standing outside and throwing them, Fili was checking them, either partially or fully. Fight Metric had Moraes landing like 6 out of 6 leg kicks, but they apparently can't check leg kicks as landed strikes. So, but yeah, I think if Yusuff wants to kick a lot, he will likely have trouble making them land clean because he doesn't have those crafty setups like Moraes does, and I think he'll get countered. Fili seems like a pretty smart fighter to me. I don't think you can make the same thing work over and over again on him. When Moraes was throwing body kicks, he ate a few, and then he did that Danny mentioned where he blocked the body kick and then immediately threw the right hand and head kick. So I think if Yusuff does have success with them, he'll be able to find a way to take them away. So yeah, the gist of it for me is that I don't trust Yusuff to effectively close distance on such a rangy guy who can effectively jab and use long-range kicks like Fili until I see him do it. And I think it's going to be hard for him to pressure because Fili will hit him with reactive takedowns. So I'll go Fili by unanimous decision.
I think all that's fair. And like I would not be surprised at all to see if I just saw, we saw Yusuff just getting stranded. But the thing is, I don't really think Fili is that tough to get in on. Like he's capable of fighting on the outside, and like I think where it would shine, I think he would probably, like, I think Andre Fili would probably beat someone like Zabit Magomedsharipov right now.
I can see that.
Like
That'd be a good fight.
Yeah, it would be a really good fight. But I think someone, where Zabit has sort of grown to being, very reliant on his range, and he really needs, his game is sort of built around people trying to breach his distance. Fili doesn't always fight like the rangy fighter that he is. Like he can actually be. You can draw him into exchanges. And like I think it would take a really disciplined approach from Fili to commit to like, okay, I'm gonna stick my jab. I'm gonna feint it. I'm gonna, he does that kind of darting right hand, and then I'm gonna get out immediately. I'm not gonna exchange, more than like 1 or 2 punches. But he's like I said, he's not terribly difficult to get in on when you want to. And so like I'm not necessarily saying I expect this fight to be as quick as Moicano Zombie, but the same kind of dynamic wouldn't surprise me at all if Fili's like, all right, I feel like I got my distance. I'm going to start, measuring my jab. And if Yusuff just counters him immediately off it, and then whether that knocks him out or not, that might make Fili a bit more hesitant to do so. Like I said, there's just something about Fili where he's never, that Shaman Moraes fight is weird because it was weirdly dominant for Fili. He's not usually that dominant a fighter. All of his fights, Michael Johnson, Dennis Bermudez, they always tend to be pretty scrappy. Again, I would not be shocked at all to see Fili put together the right outfighting strategy, but I don't think he's quite adept enough at setting his own distance without being, without kind of lazily getting hit on his way in. And I think that...
Yeah, I can see that.
Yusuff should be... I think I'm trusting Yusuff to get in on him when he needs to. So this will be fun, because now we kind of actually have dueling picks.
Yeah, this is the first time we've dissented.
I think it's
to respond to that. Go ahead.
banking a good deal on Fili's improvement, but if you look back at the Lobov fight, it was a more difficult fight for Fili than it should have been. When Lobov, if I remember correctly, Lobov actually started flustering him late, and then Fili turned to the reactive shot. So I think it might be a fight where Fili might have to lean on his wrestling. And we haven't seen a ton of, if we've seen any of it, we haven't seen a ton of Yusuff's grappling, his bottom game, anything like that. I think that might be, as you mentioned with the Pettis CDF fight, that might be where Fili has his place to rest, his place to be safe. But I think I'll ride with Yusuff here.
To respond to Sriram's point first, he did struggle a lot with Artem Lobov, which is a little bit strange, but we have to remember that Lobov was like 1 or 2 good punches away from beating Michael Johnson by decision, so he's actually an elite fighter.
Yeah, who beats Michael Johnson?
Joking.
Only everybody.
Yeah, everyone. Even Stevie Ray. But I think one of the reasons I'm so confident not so confident, but one of the reasons I think it'll be hard for Yusuff to get past Fili's jab is because he uses it very defensively. If Fili was the kind of fighter who was like constantly stepping in off his jab to land his right hand, I think there'd be a great chance of Yusuff just bombing him over the top. But Fili is a lot more conservative and passive with his jab. He'll kind of flick it out from just outside of range, and he doesn't put too much weight on it, doesn't commit a lot to it. So I think he's likely to use it like non-committally and just flick it and frustrate Yusuff with it. But another point in Yusuff's favor that we have to remember is that he's very new to the sport. When did he start? Let me look this up. So Yusuff has only been fighting since 2016. So 4 years. He's only had 11 fights.
Super nascent.
Yeah. And every time we've seen him, he's gotten tighter in the pocket, more sound defensively. His footwork and positioning has looked better. So there's a very good chance he makes a massive leap forward and just shows something that's completely new. So I think for this fight, it makes sense to be hesitant either way.
I think what you, for our listeners, what Ryan pointed out about like sort of a defensive jab, a flicking jab, that is a really, Fili's a good example of someone who has like a layered jab. That's one of the reasons that having a kind of granular jab in MMA is useful, because he doesn't do the same things with his jab every single time, and as such, it makes it a lot harder to read. But this is good. Like this is, I don't think any of us would be surprised to see this fight going a number of ways.
The odds are basically even, and I think that's for good reason.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So what do you got? One more? Or unless you guys want to
maybe two.
Oh, maybe two. Okay.
Claudia Gadelha versus Alexa Grasso.
Go Grasso!
Remember when we used to like Gadelha? That was a thing like years ago. I did.
You liked her. I was never on the hype train, but it looks
to
like
cool wrestling.
She did, and now she has cool boxing.
She does try to do some boxing things now and again.
She tries. She certainly tries. And as evidence of the Randa Marcos fight, she's still capable of not losing. Yeah, she can try. Yeah.
She doesn't always lose.
But let's move on to the one that we actually care about, which is Nasrat Haqparast versus Drew Dober. And Ryan, would you like to kick it off?
Yes, Nasrat Haqparast is the greatest lightweight in the world, and he's going to smash Drew Dober, and then he's going to beat whoever he needs to beat to get a title shot, and then he's going to win the title. The end. No. Okay.
Where's the Benil
massive.
That's pretty cut and dry.
Massive. Yes. Everyone, I think, except for Phil, for some reason, but we all love Nasrat. He's an official fight site favorite. I think this is a really tough fight for him. Haqparast does his best work on the front foot. He's a pressure fighter. I'll make the obvious analogy and compare him to Gastelum, but a Gastelum with more thoughtful striking. He's a very sharp counterpuncher. He has a great right hook because he's a southpaw. He does the typical southpaw thing where he'll try to step outside your lead foot and blast you with not so much the straight in his case, but the rear overhand. But he has a lot of ways to make it work subtly. His right hook is excellent. He can use it to enter into the long overhand left, or he'll use it as a counter when guys snap back at him as he's pressuring. He's very he walks like the line between aggression and composure really well. He's very aggressive while also maintaining his position and distance so he can pull back when guys try to hit him. Although he can go a little bit overboard with this. He isn't extremely comfortable defending punches in range, so a lot of times he'll respond to punches by backing up, and then guys can use longer combinations to relieve the pressure and get him to back into the center of the octagon. But he uses a decent high guard too when he's on the edge of his range to prevent guys from backing him up too much, and he can counter very well out of it. He has the super effective counter overhand and the right hook. He also works really well with this snap kick. It's kind of like a front kick or a triangle kick that he'll just like slam into guys' bodies. Again, in his last fight against who was it? Was it a Silva? I feel like they're all Silvas.
I think it was.
Oh yeah, Joaquim Silva. It was a Silva.
Joaquim Silva, yeah.
Yeah.
He looked like he was walking him down and slamming those ball of the foot kicks into his body, and you couldn't like see him make a face or anything, but it looked every time he got hit, it looked like he would be a little bit more hesitant to snap back at Haqparast and relieve the pressure. Dober is kind of a brawler. He's a big puncher. He's not very good with his footwork on the outside. He mostly makes his hay in the pocket with long power combinations. So his thing is moving around for a little bit. He'll either press forward or just kind of hop back and forth linearly until he finds an opening to enter with his jab and straight. He's also a southpaw, by the way. So he'll leap into the pocket with his jab to set up his rear hand, and then once he's there, he'll kind of stay in place and just bang. But he's a decent enough puncher that it works pretty well. Against Dariush, he would do that. He would come in with his jab and then rear hand, then back up with the right hook and follow again with his rear hand. So he's throwing flurries, but he has somewhat decent head movement. He doesn't really see punches coming and respond too well. He can hit some counters on the outside, but his head movement is mostly rote. So if guys are sharp, they can time him coming in, or catch him while he's planning in the pocket. And when he's throwing these combinations, he keeps his feet basically planted. So he'll throw like 4 punches at once without really adjusting his positioning, which gives guys an opportunity if they can pivot out while he's coming in, or if they can just take an adjustment step to outmaneuver him on the inside and counter him. But he works the body well too. He has a good rear hand to the body, and he kicks hard. When he's fighting an orthodox fighter, he has a good open side body kick. Against southpaws, he has hard leg kicks. And since Haqparast works off the front foot and likes to pressure guys, push them back to the cage, overwhelm them with volume, and then counter them when they lash out, I think he'll have a lot of trouble kind of playing that game against Dober. Dober is not the most nuanced striker, but he punches very hard. And these big punchers who are comfortable in the pocket tend to be difficult fights for a pressure fighter like Haqparast, especially considering that as good as he is and as hard as he does it, Haqparast is not the most athletic fighter in the world. And I think that's something that'll probably show up as a problem later as he continues to move into the top of the division, where his athletic deficiencies will start to catch up with him. And I wonder if it might be here against Dober that we really see the first sign of that. Ultimately, I think I have to... I want to favor Haqparast because I think he's a lot more nuanced of a striker. I think he'll adjust to what Dober's doing and be able to take it away. He has a lot more options. He's more defensively sound. And I think his counter uppercut could be really good when Dober does his whole 4-punch combos in the pocket. I don't know how Haqparast does against southpaws though, and that's giving me really a lot of trouble in like trying to imagine how this fight goes, because he has 4 fights in the UFC and they've all been against orthodox fighters, and it's only within his last 3 or 4 fights that he's really come into his own and adopted the style that he's so successful with. So I don't know that I can like look back at his other fights and see if there's any against southpaws, if it'll be relevant, because he doesn't really fight the same way anymore. He didn't have his tool set back then. And I really don't know how that's going to work out, because a lot of what he does seems to rely on the southpaw orthodox game. That long overhand left won't be as effective against an orthodox fighter. I don't know if he has a jab, like, at all. The right hook, I think, will be good for him against Dober. But it's also, he uses a kind of long right hook with the knuckles pointing sideways, the kind of Stevie Ray left hook that you wouldn't throw really tight in the pocket. And with the southpaw-southpaw matchup, it puts them at a little bit of a different angle than the southpaw orthodox. The distance is closer, and when they're in the pocket, I don't know if he can adjust his hook to be like more suited to close range engagements, because it's usually used for either entering into that long overhand right and closing a lot of distance, or it's used for like when a guy is at the edge of his range already and he has his hand extended just to snap them in the head as they come in, so he's not throwing it in close range. And I think Dober might be more suited for those exchanges on the inside against another southpaw. I think I'm gonna pick Dober. Fuck it. I'll pick Dober by...
Spicy.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if Haqparast wins, and I hope he does, because, like I said, he's a more nuanced striker, he's a lot more upside, but I think Dober is a rough matchup for him, and one that he's going to need to adjust his fighting style in order to surpass, and I don't know if he can do that at this point.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ryan, mixing it up. I'm impressed. I didn't think you would. I was like, this is gonna be.
I didn't either.
I was like, I figured we're all sort of default to. Yeah, I thought we were all sort of default to Haqparast, and that was gonna be it. Sorry, Sriram, what were you saying?
Yeah, I think I'll co-sign everything that he said. I'm watching the Polo Reyes fight right now for Dober, and he actually did something really cool here. So the first time he hurt Polo Reyes, he punched over Polo Reyes' collar tie, and then as Polo Reyes tried to come back with the rear hand, this is an orthodox southpaw, he doubled up on the right hand while dipping underneath the straight. And I think it's like Haqparast has a decent lead hand in terms of that right hook, as Ryan mentioned, but I'm not sure how much play it'll get in a fight that he's not used to. And even against Dariush, it was kind of just like, yeah, Dober had that combination, but it was kind of just Dober taking advantage of Dariush being kind of a void in terms of defense in the pocket and overall athleticism, because Dariush is that kind of fighter. But I think I'll still trust Haqparast, even while co-signing everything that Ryan said about the southpaw-southpaw matchup, and in general, the power puncher being tough for the pressure fighter who just wants to bully. I think I trust Haqparast in terms of sticking with what he does best in terms of pressure, and Dober eventually just running out of ideas, I guess, compared to Haqparast being able to mix up his approach a little bit and work around the tougher match.
I think Ryan is off his rocker. I am going to pick Haqparast, and I am actually going to pick him to win it fairly easily. I think there is a question mark with Dober being a southpaw, and Dober is probably, actually, I would say, the most willing puncher that Haqparast has faced thus far. The thing is, we don't really know. There's a chance that Haqparast could just implode against another southpaw, and that he just has no idea how to handle a close stance matchup. The problem with Dober is that he's he hasn't exactly been like thrilling or like inspiring greatly in his competition either. I don't put a whole lot of stock into knocking out Polo Reyes. I think that fight was set up for Dober to win, and he won it. The thing that Dober, one of the problems with Dober is that he's slow. Like he's fairly foot slow, and he's fairly slow with his hands as well. He's getting better at seeing. Like, I would disagree slightly with Ryan. I think he's actually getting a little bit better at seeing punches coming. Like against what was it, Frank Camacho? He did a better job of sort of like, throwing away a 1-2 and then, pulling his head back, knowing that Camacho was, going to counter. And then he would go into like a deeper, more layered exchange where he'd hit the body and so forth.
Yeah.
Like he is getting better at like the kind of fight that he should be winning. But I was actually not. I was a little bit surprised on rewatch at the Dariush fight because Dariush is, who's also a southpaw. Dariush's jab gave him some issue. I don't think Dober is actually tremendously well suited to dealing with straight shots from range. And Haqparast can both set up. He can both set up with his kicks. He can feint against Joaquin Silva. It was a Silva, right? It wasn't a Santos. It was a Silva.
It was a Silva.
It was a Silva. All right. It's either Silva or Santos. Jesus. In his last fight, Haqparast did better at feinting and actually sort of drawing responses. I talk a little bit about this in the article that I just wrote about Haqparast, but he did a better job of like kind of feinting his way in, getting Joaquin to bite, and then even if he wouldn't counter, he would also just sort of get out of range. And he's mindful of his foot positioning, and he's comfortable. Like I've seen him comfortable in punching exchanges. I don't know. Like he could, there's still the chance that he could get scared off. There's a lot we still don't really know about Haqparast. He's 24, I think. Like he's young. He has to be one of the youngest fighters on the roster, and we're still not entirely there. There's a chance that he could be just a phenom prospect, or he could just crash and burn. But we've liked what we've seen from him a lot so far. I think that Dober is certainly more experienced in a kind of closed stance, but I don't think he's actually going to be that much better there. I don't think he's like he doesn't have tricks of rhythm. He doesn't have any kind of like, he doesn't have the same sort of understanding of distance that Haqparast does. So what I think we're going to get is probably a tepid first round where, maybe Dober wins it, like off of volume, off of initiative, and Haqparast might just take a little bit of time to get his reads. But Haqparast has shown a better propensity of catching and countering kicks. Like I said, he's done a better job of learning to feint. Dober did not look tremendously comfortable against another southpaw who could hit straight shots from distance against Dariush. And he's generally a fighter who still kind of lacks one area where he is decidedly better than his opponent. And, if all things are equal on the feet, like Haqparast is just a deeper, more thoughtful striker. He's just a kind of a deeper, more thoughtful version of Dober in some ways. So I think this is a good test for Haqparast. And if he fails it, it's one that I don't think should be held too much against him. Like I think there's still plenty of room to grow. But I think I just trust him on a moment-to-moment basis a little bit more. I don't think Dober's quality of opposition that he's been beating has really been that impressive. And I was a little bit surprised at how much difficulty he had with Dariush's jab. So I'm going to pick Haqparast, and I honestly might even pick him by finish, because I think if Haqparast actually gets rolling, the more he gets rolling, the harder this is going to get for Dober. So
I think that all makes sense. And again, like I said for Yusuff versus Fili, if there's one fighter who's likely to come out and show something completely new and have improved a lot, it's certainly Haqparast. Dober at this point is pretty much the fighter he's going to be. I don't expect him to make any great leaps, but Haqparast is, like you said, he's 24. He's been fighting since 2012, but he only had one fight per year until 2014. So he's only been competing regularly for 6 years. He's starting to reach that point now where we could expect him within a year or two to start developing into the fighter he's ultimately going to be. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he comes out and looks way better than he has before. And I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he comes out and looks exactly like he had before and still beats Dober fairly cleanly. I think Haqparast is a deserved favorite here, although the line is a bit wide. Dober is at like plus 300, isn't he? Let me check.
I already put some down on
Dober. Haqparast is around a minus 300 to minus 400 favorite. There's a lot of variance in these odds.
That's wide.
I would probably set the line somewhere around minus 170 to minus 200 for Haqparast. But I think for some reason I just have a hunch that he's running into his first really tough matchup here, and I have a hunch that Dober is just going to crack him. I like Dober to win this for some reason. I would not bet on Dober, although come to think of it, the odds are wide, so Dober probably isn't a bad bet. But I would not trust Dober with a lot of my money, but I'm going to go with him here.
Did you say that you bet on Dober already?
Yeah, I did. Plus 270.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet here.
That's a fine bet. I think I even tweeted when I was working on the Haqparast article. I was like, these odds are whacked out.
I think I got it super early because I was expecting the sharps to be on Dober at this long.
We're all Roxy bettors here too, right? Plus 625.
Sure. Damn.
What does Barber do?
I'm not sure.
I can't answer that question for you.
When I saw her on Contender Series, she was like a shitty female Rockhold.
She's large. She's strong.
She's on Instagram. She does that. She's like 22, so like it is really funny to watch her fight and to listen to her interviews, and it's like, I mean, I don't know how she would be talking. I'm 23, but I'm like, wow, you. I feel like there needs to be a cutoff for age in the UFC because there just feels like there's a massive maturity gap missing in there. So either way,
you can be as old as you want. Look at Mike Perry. Is he like in his 20s? I don't think.
No, he's probably like 40 in fight years at this point. Yeah,
so there's no way to guarantee that. I think I'm 20 and Macy Barber makes me cringe.
The only Barber fight I've seen was that one where she was getting pieced up by that white girl who looked like a sysadmin, like an IT professional. That's it. And then she just kind of like randomly realized that she was a lot bigger and stronger and could simply eat the smaller person.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what there's to say about her. Like, her nickname is the Future. Oh, that's
not going to age well.
That's apt. Do we want to talk about Elliott Askarov? I'm not sure what there really is to say about that.
I have a little bit to say about it now that I've given our listeners confidence to put the house on Roxy.
Yeah, go ahead. Give our listeners betting advice, Ryan.
So Elliott Askarov. Elliott is obviously a very weird fighter. He fights kind of somewhat like a bargain bin Dominic Cruz. I wouldn't take that metaphor too deep, but he has the janky movement on the outside. He's kind of tricky for fighters to know what to do with on the feet. Although I think he's starting to slow down now and get caught a lot more. Askarov does not do anything on the feet, really. He's very inert. He's a pure grappler. And I think Elliott probably could keep it on the feet and maybe style on him, but he's not going to do that. Elliott can't resist shooting. He can't resist getting himself in scrambling matches. And I think Askarov is a little bit tighter, a little bit more sound in those kind of really scrambly grappling fights. And very specifically, there's this one thing Tim Elliott does that I've been banging on about since his fight with Smolka. The way he shoots his knee tap. Most fighters, when they knee tap, they'll come up into the clinch. If you look at Michael Perez Gonzalez, who just fought Brandon Moreno in LFA, he has one of the tightest knee taps in MMA. He'll hit it from the clinch, he'll hit it off double legs, where he rises up with the underhook and gets chest to chest before blocking their knee and taking them over with the underhook. Elliott doesn't do that. He'll like shoot a double and hug the hips like you would to finish a double leg. But instead of turning the corner with and using his head to push off, the way you finish a double leg, he'll squeeze the legs together and run around to finish to the opposite side. Usually when you see guys finish double legs that way, they'll do something to avoid just putting themselves straight into a guillotine. Like they'll let the opponent go down first and then follow, or they will, as they go down, they'll make sure they square their hips up so they aren't just hanging kind of like almost perpendicular to their opponent's hips with their opponent's legs wrapped around them in guard and their head right under the armpit, which is exactly the position you want to be in to finish a guillotine. If you look at when Elliott finishes his knee taps, his opponent is kind of like curled up with their hips scooted out to the side of it, and that's the perfect position to guillotine somebody from. So his knee tap constantly gets him into trouble with front headlocks. Smolka would wrap up a front headlock and threaten sweeps or use like butterfly hooks to escape. He got guillotined against Deiveson Figueiredo doing the same thing. And Askarov has a really tight front headlock game. He's a very good submission grappler in general. He hit a twister on veteran flyweight Jose Maria Tome, which was sick. And he has a lot of slick front headlock chokes. He has a great guillotine. He has a good Darce. So aside from Elliott being a very willing scrambler and Askarov being tighter in those, I think there's a great chance Elliott just shoots his way into a guillotine. So I'm going Askarov by sub.
And to me, I was kind of appalled at the Figueiredo fight. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to have the same depth of knowledge about Askarov or grappling in general, but yeah, Elliott just cannot seem to get himself to help himself when it comes to bad positions on the ground, and I think Askarov is, from what we've seen, he was very opportunistic, and so
he's a great back taker.
If this is, I wouldn't be surprised if at all if this is just like a rerun of the Ben Gwynn or Deiveson Figueiredo fights. Like, it might just be that. So,
yeah,
that's all I got. Sriram, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have anything on that fight other than Elliott being guillotinable, which incidentally I just learned from Ryan right after the Figueiredo fight. So I'm not going to rip him off, but pretty much the same thing. I think Elliott looked kind of bad against Figueiredo, but guys tend to look bad against Figueiredo, including hopefully Joseph Benavidez. And yeah, Askarov, he shouldn't have drawn in his last fight, but he looked reasonably promising.
He lost that fight for sure.
Yeah, against a Moreno who, against Kai Kara-France, looked sensational. So I'm
Moreno
going
is
to
really
go with
tough
Askarov.
for submission grapplers.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else?
I mean, is there anything else to talk about?
Unless you want to talk about
ready
Holm Pennington, but
absolutely, let's do it.
Jackson Wing Queen Holly Holm again.
Holm looks like she might be shot, and she is her style is not even allowing her to win rounds anymore. So unless Raquel Pennington is done, she should win.
Seems about right to me. Baby,
I'm good.
I haven't watched Pennington in a long time,
would we be able to tell if
but
Holly Holm was shot?
Maybe.
I'm not sure we would. Would we be able to tell if Holly Holm is shot?
She got knocked out in her last fight, and she's historically been incredibly tough.
That's true.
I mean,
in general, in terms of
I guess when she starts throwing less volume would be the clear sign.
Yeah,
but she's not even like she can't even she can't even really win rounds on the feet anymore. Her best performance in the UFC was against Megan Anderson. She was entirely grappling.
Sambo.
She couldn't win rounds against Beth Correa quite a while ago, though, too.
She could not. Nope, that is a
There's
thing.
always been something of that in her.
Yeah. This fight's going to suck. Don't bet on this fight. Like,
no.
Just
what are the odds on this one? I don't even know.
I think they're pretty close. Pennington is a small underdog, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm not touching this unless someone's like minus 300.
Pennington is it's near even. She's like 115 plus 115.
Yeah, no, there's
I have 125 here, so yeah. Okay. I still wouldn't recommend betting on it. Like I don't know how much I'm supposed to trust Pennington, and I don't really trust Holly Holm. Why is this the co-main? Like this is shockingly bad. Like
I heard somewhere that they were moving CDF versus Pettis to the co-main, but I don't know.
That'd be cool.
I think they originally had that as the co-main, and then they moved the home Pennington. They like mixed up the card for no reason.
Huh.
And
that's interesting.
This is a Conor McGregor pay-per-view. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, even if McGregor isn't, who he used to be, like you would have thought the UFC would have tried to, milk some money out of this with like a good co-main, like I don't know, Gaethje versus someone, or
the weird part is that there was a Raleigh card right after this one that's like legit stacked before everyone fell out due to injuries. So,
yeah.
Why?
It's the weird thing where like obviously they're just hoping the pay-per-view survives off the strength of McGregor, but you would expect them to put something on there in order to give people like new fans that are watching for McGregor someone to get interested in. I guess maybe that's what Pettis and Ferreira on the main card is doing, but it seems like they put most of the worthwhile fights in the prelims.
Yeah. Like this is a prelim card, and then you check out until Pettis CDF, and then you check out again until the main event. I don't even like.
Yeah, there's like a 2-hour long smoke break.
And then next week's card isn't even really that special, anyways. It's like we have.
It used to be good.
Blades versus JDS.
Edgar and Sandhagen, and then Edgar screwed everything up for everyone at the same time.
Putting himself.
Yeah.
Emmett and Allen were supposed to fight there too.
That would have been a weird, dumb fight, but worth watching.
And so that's the one with RDA Chiesa. Oh, that's right. Josh Emmett fell out of the Arnold Allen fight.
Alex Perez is fighting. I like him.
Darko Stozic. Best light heavyweight prospect. For sure.
Who is that?
I'm kidding. The guy who was didn't he kick Kennedy ninjutsu in the balls a couple times?
Wait. Who are we talking about?
Darko Stozic. Wasn't he the one? He's like trained by Crow Cop, but he's not any good.
Yeah,
he's there.
The guy who was supposed to be kind of okay, but wasn't.
Right. Yeah, not even kind of okay. Yeah. So, awesome.
Condemnation.
Yeah. So that's gonna be a pretty limp one. So.
Now, if you guys have been listening along all the way to this point and are as depressed about the state of UFC cards as we are, don't worry. Starting in February, we're going to bring you coverage of ACA, the actual best promotion in MMA, and it's going to be great. You're going to love Ali Bogov, Abdulaziz, Abdulvakabov, and Edward Vartanian every bit as much as we do. We promise
Ryan,
you.
you're going to be heartbroken because the Bagov thing is
Bogov
not
went to welterweight?
February.
Yeah, I know. We'll still do him with the lightweight division because we started in January. Yeah. But he missed weight a couple times, right?
I think, and he went to the hospital for one.
Yeah. They canceled his fight with Kaliev before it eventually happened because he missed weight. And then I think they wanted to make it a non-title fight, and he was like, "Screw you, I'm not fighting." So they just suspended him instead.
Yeah, that's the kind of Russian defiance that I can respect, other than, Khabib doing Khabib thing.
I think the next card where I feel like it's really apart from ACA, I guess the next UFC card, because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people don't have the same knowledge of ACA. We have asked Ryan to come back for a conversation on UFC 247 because we want to do a big talk about John Jones versus Dominic Reyes.
And Valentina Shevchenko versus Caitlin Chikagin.
More importantly.
And of course, Andrea Lee versus Lauren Murphy.
Absolutely.
This is the all women's MMA channel. But for people who are looking forward, before we wrap this up, we have been, if you've noticed, the fight site has some very well documented opinions about John Jones. And I think that we are planning to do a fairly hefty discussion about that his upcoming fight with Dominic Reyes. So keep a lookout for that, because it's starting to feel like his window is really starting to close. So for people who want to look forward, that's kind of what we have on the horizon.
And I'm probably going to depress you all when I talk about Dominic Reyes too. So there's that to look forward to as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one.
I'm good on this end.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
All right.